Hey guys, Jesse Wright here with YouCouldBe.com. In the last video, I talked about how I bought a house this week for $5,500. Well, in a couple days, I'll be closing on another house, and I'm also gonna be paying $5,500 for it. So in this video, I'm gonna tell you all about how I'm finding these deals for such a low price, why the sellers are so motivated to sell, and how you can replicate what I'm doing. All right, guys, so before I continue, I should say that this type of investing is not for the amateur investor or any kind of investor that's not willing to put in the work and do a lot of due diligence. Okay, so both of these houses, both the one that I purchased earlier this week and the one that I'm hoping to purchase on Monday, both of them, they were off-market deals. So they weren't listed on Zillow or Trulia, Realtor.com. You couldn't find them on the MLS. One of them, my wife found on Craigslist, and it was posted on Craigslist by a wholesaler. And the second one was offered to me by that same wholesaler. Now, the one thing that both of these houses have in common, other than the fact that they weren't listed on any of the traditional real estate websites, was that they were both going to be lost in a tax foreclosure if they weren't purchased before August 29th. The rules are a little different from state to state and from county to county, but in my state, there's a tax auction every single year. And in most states, it's gonna be every year. Some states are gonna have multiple tax auctions every single year. And investors from all over the country will either come to these tax auctions, or they will send somebody to these tax auctions, or they'll work with someone locally at these tax auctions. And what they'll do is they'll pay the taxes that were not paid by the current homeowners. So after a tax lien is sold at auction, if a homeowner wants to keep his house, if he wants to keep it from going into tax foreclosure, he has a certain period of time where he can go to that lien holder and he can pay that lien holder whatever he had invested in the tax lien plus a certain percentage. It's usually 20%. So if a homeowner owed $1,000 for their property taxes and they weren't able to pay them by the deadline, a tax lien investor came in and he purchased that tax lien for $1,000. Now, if the homeowner wants to keep his property, then he's gonna have to pay that tax lien holder $1,200, give or take. And the period of redemption that that homeowner has before he completely loses the property is usually somewhere between 6 months and 2 years. In Mississippi, where I invest, it's 2 years. Now, in Mississippi, 97% of all the tax liens that are purchased at auction are redeemed, meaning the homeowner goes to the person that bought the lien and they pay them off and they get to keep their house. But in 3% of all those cases, the tax lien actually turns into a foreclosure, and at that point the tax lien holder can get what is called a tax deed, and at that point he owns the property. Now, most tax lien investors are not interested in owning property. Some of them are, but most of them are not. What they're interested in is getting their 10, 15, or 20% rate of return on their investment in that tax lien. They're hoping that the homeowner will come and they will redeem the property and they're just gonna make their 10 to 20%. But in those rare cases where the homeowner doesn't redeem the property, they have to either A, sell the property, or B, hold the property. Their third option is to not do anything, and in the next year's tax auction, they're gonna lose that property to whoever purchased the next year's tax lien. Now, in my case, that tax auction is coming up on August 29th of this year. And like I said, it's different in every state, but in my state, it's August 29th. So this seller is very motivated to get rid of these properties because he doesn't want to pay next year's taxes, but he also doesn't want to lose out on his investment. Now, as for the property that I bought earlier this week, when he first listed it, he tried to sell it for $15,000. Then he dropped the price down to $10,000, and as the tax auction came closer and closer, he finally agreed to let me pay $5,500 for the property. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to think about before you make this kind of purchase. The first thing to think about is that, again, it's not for amateur investors. If you're not willing to do your research to really get to know how things work in your specific area, then this is not the kind of investment that you want to make. I've held off on this type of investment until this most recent purchase. So, keep that in mind. The next thing to think about is that a tax deed is not a warranty deed. When you get a tax deed, there may be liens still on the property that stick with the property when you take ownership of that property. Now, you as an investor, unless you went and bought the property by paying the taxes and then waiting the redemption period and then finally getting the tax deed, you're not going to have a tax deed. What you're going to get from the tax deed owner is a quitclaim deed. And with a quitclaim deed, again, any liens, any mortgages, any IRS liens or child support liens, all of those things can transfer over with the property. Now, in a lot of states, these liens are completely wiped out once a tax deed has been issued, with the exception of an IRS lien, because an IRS lien is a federal lien and a state court cannot get rid of a federal lien. But in most cases, or in a lot of cases, these other liens, like a mortgage lien, can be wiped out. It just depends on your particular state. But my point is, you need to do a lot of research and you need to make sure that you know exactly what you're getting into before you purchase this kind of deed. Now, I purchased this first house for $5,500, and back in 2007, 2008, somewhere around there, somebody took a mortgage out against this house for $57,000. And then they lost it in a tax sale. They lost it to tax foreclosure. Now, in between the period of time when they got the mortgage and when they lost it, that mortgage company actually went bankrupt. And then, that tax lien holder, he lost it to the next tax lien holder, and then that tax lien holder sold it to the guy that I bought it from. So, my lawyer, my closing attorney, when he did a title search on this property, he told me, don't do it. He was like, this is not a clear title. You can get into some serious hot water. And I think a lot of people would have went running as soon as they heard that. But what I did was I got in touch with a lawyer that specialized in curing titles and taking dirty titles and making them clean through a legal process. And he spent some time with me over the phone, and I gave him the details, and he basically walked me through why in this particular case it would be safe for me to buy this property. So in my particular situation, I'm not really intending to sell the property, and I'm also not intending to borrow money against the property. So because of that, curing the title or confirming the deed or quieting the title, however you want to word it, isn't really that necessary. Now, if I wanted to go through that process, it would cost me somewhere between $1,500 and $2,500. But if I did want to borrow money against the property, or I did want to sell it to somebody that needed financing to purchase it, I would need to go through that process. And if that happened and there was a mortgage against the property, then that mortgage holder could go up against me, and I probably wouldn't win. I would probably have to settle, and I would probably convince them to give me the money that I had put into the property, and I would just kind of wash my hands of it all. But again, in this case, that mortgage holder went out of business in 2008, 2009, somewhere around there, so that wasn't really a concern. So again, just to recap, if you're going to do this, you need to do your research, you need to talk to closing attorneys, you need to talk to attorneys that specialize in getting a confirmed deed or a quieted title. You need to probably join a local REI investment group and talk to other investors that have done things similar to this. You always want to purchase a title search on any property that you buy, especially properties like this. And at the end of the day, just remember that no matter what real estate investment you're making, you are taking a risk. So calculate that risk very carefully and determine whether or not it's the type of risk that you're willing to take. All right, guys, that's all I've got for this video. If you found it interesting or helpful, please share it in your favorite groups on Facebook. And as always, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.